Do you know how good I've gotten at opening our beeper? Like we had like 3 seconds before the beep and I didn't even have the page open and I still got in under the gun.
Look, I didn't want to bring this up in public, but I've often felt like your beeping was inadequate, Brad. And I'm glad that you're finally getting your game in. You're getting the beeper ready to go. Like we're not having those big waits. I feel like it's all coming around. It's all kind of coming up, Brad, these days.
I'm the fastest draw in the West, man.
Oh, man.
Fastest beep in the West.
I can't believe you didn't know about Control K.
Hey, always strive to be increasing your knowledge about the world that's my life philosophy. If you ever lose the capacity for childlike wonder at all that is, like, what's the point of even living anymore? So, hey, I am extremely excited that I have learned about Control K on this day.
I had a conversation with an engineer at Whiskey Media in 2010 when I started working there. That was like, yo, what's your linking keyboard shortcut? They're like, why do you need a linking keyboard shortcut? I was like, well, every single time I write a post, I put about 10 links into it. And if I have to go up and click the thing manually, I'm going to come over with a fork and jab somebody's eye out after about 2 weeks.
Dude, I've been clicking manually my whole life.
Wow. So Control K is it. That's the universal. Well, it's not all universal, but it's not like copy, paste, undo universal, but it's up there.
It's up there. I mean, to be clear, we're talking about linkifying a link itself, like a link where the text is also the link, right? Like this does not work on a piece of text that you want to hyperlink that is not itself.
Yes.
Does it?
So if you highlight a piece of text,
any Control K aware editor will pop up a way for you to punch the link in?
This is where it's not universal. If it's a good editor, you highlight a piece of normal text that is not a hyperlink. It's not a URI, a universal resource indicator, or whatever the hell URI stands for now, because I feel like it changes every once in a while.
I think that's
right.
You
Control K it, and then you can like paste a link in or type a link in, whatever. But if it's a good one, it's context aware, and when you highlight a URI and hit Control K, it will automatically make that clickable.
That's so exciting. You don't understand.
This is like, let's see, what are some other banger keyboard shortcuts? We made a video series on these at Tested back in the day.
Oh, wow. I have to look that up because apparently I've been very out of the loop for some time. But another one.
Windows plus L.
For
lock your screen. Don't do that while we're recording. It's probably bad.
Yes. Well, I mean, if we're getting into Windows keyboard shortcuts, like all bets are off. There are a zillion of those. But I was going to say like another text editor one that I just learned about. I don't know how universal this is. Control Shift V to paste without any formatting.
Yeah, that's a good one, but that is definitely not universal because I don't think Google Docs honors that. Well, I guess it does now, huh?
Google Docs is where I learned about it, so it must be somewhat widespread.
I'm going to go one layer deeper. I installed the new version of Power Toys using Winget the other day.
Oh man, I got to try Winget.
And there's a thing in there now called Power Toys Run that basically works like the Spotlight, the command spacebar launcher from OS 10. It's so freaking good.
Well, yes, but I tried it a while back. It is great. It is the pop-up Spotlight from OS 10 Mac OS. It's also Alfred. Did you ever use Alfred?
Yeah, Alfred was good until Apple Sherlocked it.
Is that, oh dude, is that the word?
Sherlocking is what happens when Apple takes a feature that existed previously as a standalone application and turns it into an OS level system feature.
Is it Apple specifically, or could anybody Sherlock?
I think anybody can Sherlock at this point, but I feel like it's a pretty unique to the Apple ecosystem. Microsoft's move is usually to take functionality away, not to add new functionality.
That is fair. I mean, they did it with Nightlight, though. Like Flux has gotten Sherlocked almost out of existence by, what is it, Night Shift in OS 10 and Nightlight in Windows?
Yeah, I think so. Flux, I can sync my hue lights to my screen, though.
Okay.
Let me tell you, if you want to make a bunch of people really angry when you're streaming, turn Flux on.
Sometimes I play games with Nightlight on, and I don't care because it is very pleasant.
I like there's a lot of data that says Nightlight does absolutely nothing, like that warming, you're taking your blue out with screen filters or whatever. I don't care.
We may talk about that later this year, but yes, you're right.
It's a nighttime. It feels like night. I like to turn it down at the nighttime.
I ever like, do you have it on in the morning? Like I have like probably a minimum of an hour in me with Nightlight on before I can turn it off. Like I cannot look at a fully bluified screen first thing in the morning.
Oh, I go full eye blaster. I got the ring light up here. The ring light's always set to warm though, because I gotta make myself not look so pasty.
Well, welcome to our symposium on keyboard shortcuts and monitor color shift habits.
Sherlocking in the command line.
Yes.
And Winget.
Oh, Winget. Yeah. Well, this cold open's going to get too long, but I want to try Winget, but it's such a pain to install. Like, there's no easy, just click this button and get Winget. Like right now, you have to opt into some preview flight.
No.
I forget what it is, or I mean, there are multiple ways to get it, but none of them are. It's not done. So like,
you can Winget yourself right over to the Microsoft Store and install a thing that has Winget in it.
That's what I mean, though. It's not just Winget. It's some big preview package.
It's not that big. It's just Winget and terminal. And maybe some other crap that I didn't care to read. Look, I didn't read the fact, Brad. Don't yell at me.
Dude, I typed Winget into the Microsoft Store and nothing came up.
No, you got it. It's called the app install package.
Exactly.
Or something like that.
I'm not going to install the app install package. I just want Winget.
Well, yeah, like you can Winget yourself some lower standards then.
The app installer?
The app installer, I believe, is what it's called.
Wait, apparently I have that installed already.
Yeah, you do, because you had the terminal beta from a while ago, which is how you used to get it. It's already there. You have Winget. You got Winget a long time ago.
You think that, but I just typed Winget into the terminal and nothing.
That's the exact same experience I had. I had to install a whole bunch of other nonsense from GitHub in order to get it to work.
That's exactly why I don't have Winget.
You know what I needed Chocolatey to have a Winget install for me, so that then I was done.
Okay, let me tie this whole thing together. All right, this
Okay.
cold open is about to come home.
Bring it home.
I have Chocolatey, which I don't mind, but I have just enough issues with it that I would like to try Winget. Chocolatey, you often have to run as administrator in a terminal to install things.
Mm-hmm.
If you hit Window X, you will pop up a start menu, right-click menu, where you can hit A to open a terminal in admin mode.
Ooh.
Or if you have it on your start menu, you can hit, I believe it's Control-Shift window and the number, yes, of the icon on your start menu.
Oh, Control and Shift opens it, whatever you're opening in on the, because just Windows key plus the number is opening the shortcut.
Yes. So I think we've mentioned that before. Windows key plus the number of the icon from the left on the start menu will open that application.
For things that are pinned.
Yes, for things that are pinned. So if you hold it, it's Control Shift window. So hold like Control Shift window and hit the number key of your terminal and it will, or whatever application, and it will open it as admin.
Well, I've just gotten informed about something new.
It's always be learning.
Welcome to Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod. I'm Will.
I'm Brad. It's an exciting day here, Will.
It's Friday.
Well, yes, it's Friday.
Ladies and gentlemen, the weekend.
Oh, don't. I can't. Look, I get why people like that account. I'm afraid it's a little past its sell-by date.
It's better than the Rebecca Black Friday one. That's all I'm going to say.
I guess that's true. I admire the spirit. Hey, what's not to like about a Friday afternoon?
I love a Friday afternoon. Like you sit back, crack open a beer.
Yeah.
Maybe make a gin and tonic. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Go enjoy some outside, see some fractal nature.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Eat some snacks.
Play 4 or 5 hours of PUBG starting at 8 o'clock Pacific time, like you do every weekend, every Friday night.
Except customs instead of regular.
Yeah, it's custom. So it's weird games. It's fun.
That's everybody's Friday night routine, of course.
Yeah, that's what everybody does. That's just the normal thing people do.
Right. But also,
yes,
I believe this is by our internationally standardized method of counting the 100th episode of this podcast.
Wait, I thought it was. We talked about this last week. I thought this was the 101st episode.
That's the literal number, not the recognized.
Wait, so we have an observed number and a literal number?
Like we've moved to a semantic versioning scheme here for this. I'm sorry.
Okay, so there's some problems I'm noticing because I have an archive of all the episodes on my hard drive, and
so yes,
yeah, and I feel like we probably had a conversation about this about somewhere just under 2 years ago. And we decided the file name structure for the podcast is digit-title.mp3.
Yes, something like that.
So now we have a problem, as I understand it.
Yeah. Well, I archive all the Audacity projects as well.
Jesus, really?
I have every Audacity project for every episode of this podcast sitting right in front of me.
Does that mean you have individual tracks?
Yes.
How many? It's got to be like a terabyte at this point, right? Because they're like 600 megs each per track.
I'm a digital pack rat. Okay, I can't get rid of stuff. Like,
wow, hashtag hoarding.
In my mind, it's like, hey, a couple of years from now, when this is the biggest podcast on the planet, and people are out there and they want lossless versions of this podcast, or like maybe we need to go back and clean up your track and not mine in episode 17.
What? My track in 17 was perfect.
Why not have the original source material, the lossless source material?
When the Library of Congress calls, we're ready.
Yes, in the multi-track format, just in case. Anyway, so to date, 7-zipped, each one of those projects, 7-zipped, 52.1 gigabytes of...
Oh, that's not bad.
Of TechPod source material.
I want to know, does that mean somebody could make like a Dolby Digital...
Yes.
Full Atmos version of the podcast.
Put our voices in Atmos 64 channels.
I want us to be whizzing around the theater when the podcast if we ever get to do live events, I want to rent out a Dolby Atmos theater and have a tech pod where we're just moving around the room seamlessly during the entire conversation.
It's what a weird coincidence that you mentioned that, because I was thinking about doing some vocal processing on a couple of spots in this episode. Oh, for example, when one of us says scene drama.
We wait. Scene drama.
Yeah, we'll see what kind of reverb effects I have to work with after this. Once we're done recording here, we'll see how those turn out. Wait, can you do it live?
But I wouldn't. Would I do something like that live? That would be ridiculous.
When you look up, I know that you're looking at your high monitor, which means you're probably messing with something on that computer.
Me mess with something on the top computer. Scene drama.
That may have gone through to your recording, but it did not come through this video call.
Oh, hold on. It was turned off. Sorry. Scene drama.
Nope. Sorry.
Still nothing?
Nope.
Crap. Hold on.
Look.
I got this, I believe.
There's no substitute for good post-production.
That's true. Oh, here we go. Oh, that's 16. 14. Scene drama. Fudge.
I'm sorry. We should move on.
This is whoa.
You should do the rest of the episode like this.
Drama.
That's no.
I don't know. I don't know what's going on here. I don't know, man.
Oh, wow.
Scene drama.
Wow. There's a robot has shown up too. That one's pretty good actually.
Scene drama.
All right. This podcast is probably unlistenable now.
People are going to be really upset about this. I can tell you in advance.
That's probably true. Real quick before we get on with the scene drama.
We just made some scene drama of our own there, I bet.
Probably. I just really wanted to talk briefly about our perhaps astonishing lack of foresight in not putting 2 leading zeros on the episode number of all these Audacity projects.
I believe
we started out with only 1 leading 0, as in 01, 02, 03. And I'm pretty sure when I put this episode 100 one in there, it's going to float to the very top, right? Or
it's going to be very
close to it.
So I think we had this conversation. We can probably go back and find the logs in Discord, but I'm pretty sure we had this conversation. And the takeaway, I said, and I may have been wrong, but I thought it was representative man's own hubris to imply that we would have 100 episodes of this podcast.
I think that's kind of where I was at. That's pretty much exactly where I was at. I was like, this will probably peter out somewhere in the 60s.
So anyway, good job, us.
Yes. We started with seasons. So all the projects are named E00, E16, E24 in the file name. Yeah. Originally, we had S01, E17.
How long did we do that for? I don't remember that.
For the first 2-3 months, I think those were there, because we thought we had some weird cockamamie idea that we were going to do seasons.
We thought we were going to have hiatuses occasionally.
Yeah. And then instead it turns out we may have missed 1 week, but that's about it.
Yeah, we did have a hiatus. Well, it's not too late. We could start.
I guess.
This could be the first episode of season 2 right here.
People listen
season
to
2, episode 1.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I guess you're right.
Then we solved the problem.
We made it to 100 episodes.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks everybody for listening.
Yes, absolutely. That's what I was going to say. Is people seem to like this podcast. We can't stop now.
No, can't stop, won't stop.
People are relying on us.
In fact, today we're fulfilling a promise that is long overdue.
Long overdue.
When we hit 2,000 patrons on the Patreon a couple of months ago now, we said we would do, when we hit 1,700 patrons on the Patreon, we said we would do scene drama when we hit 2,000. And people were really excited about that, apparently, because we hit 2,000 15 minutes after we made the promise. And then all of our preparation time evaporated, and we had to we decided to sit and think about it, and let's do a little bit before we dug in. But we have the long promised, never delivered scene drama episode coming in hot.
Until now.
Right now.
Also, just a quick addendum to our naming catastrophe.
Yeah.
I've done enough shell scripting and regular expressions and pattern matching and stuff like that I think I could one-liner this problem out of existence.
You can't retcon this problem.
I can mass rename all of those 01s to 001s.
Nope. This isn't Batman's Unfortunate History. This isn't Han shooting first. This isn't something you can simply wave your hand and say, oh, nope, not a problem. Bash scripting saves the day. This is something we have to live with. We have to learn from our mistakes. And when we launch the next podcast, Brad and Will made a movie pod. We should learn. Yeah.
Many lessons need to be learned.
Don't idly go into podcast is the lesson, I think, here.
Yes. Not nearly as many lessons as Netgate, the makers of pfSense, need to learn, though.
Wow, that was an incredible segue. It's almost like we've been doing this for 100 episodes. What lessons? This is so I think this happened after we made this promise. This was a thing.
This is kind of the one to me. Like, first of all, like, part of the reason we put this episode off is because we were sort of weighing how to do it, or we were a little torn on, like, is it a bit uncouth to, like, point and laugh at these, like, ridiculous situations of people behaving badly in the tech and software world?
Yeah. A friend of mine offered to come on the show and read his shit posting from, like, the early 2000s when he caused a bunch of scene drama. I was like, I don't think that's exactly the intent that we're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, we could get there. We'll see.
Maybe later. Yeah. Maybe a special episode.
Yes.
But yeah, like, for me, the scene drama has to have, like, a couple of components. There has to be some malfeasance.
Mm-hmm.
And then there has to be some righteous indignation at the suggestion of malfeasance from probably whoever did the malfeasance. And then, like, hopefully there's resolution, but often it turns out not so much.
I would say definitely you want some good doubling down in there. Like, you definitely want somebody who is at fault to not admit fault and to instead dig themselves deeper.
Maybe some baseless act, like tweeting through it definitely is a scene drama.
Yes, a staple.
Yes, a staple of the genre. I also think, I also, like, I feel like if a lesson is learned, other than maybe don't work with this company anymore, you maybe it's not really scene drama and it's just like people learning from mistakes, which is a good thing. Like,
yeah, at that point, you're just de-escalating drama. Like, nobody wants that.
Yeah. Like, well, no, actually, that is exactly what we want, just to be clear.
But you know, people like rubbernecking a car crash.
I mean, part of the reason we took realistically, when we made the promise to do this, I didn't think we were going to hit 2,000 patrons ever. So I thought it was just an idle threat.
Yeah.
Because this whole concept of this episode makes me kind of uncomfortable. Because
fine.
Well, no, but like, I like to celebrate people doing the right thing, which is making a mistake and learning from the mistake and moving on, taking those lessons to heart. I mean, and scene drama is inherently against that concept.
You're right. I mean, like, if there's anything the world does not need more of, it's gleeful negativity.
Jesus, yeah.
But again, these people are really behaving poorly in most of these cases.
And also, there's at least the stuff that we picked out to talk about today is, I don't want to say victimless because none of it's victimless, but like, probably nobody got hurt physically or maybe even monetarily. Maybe monetarily. I don't know.
All right.
It's complicated. Okay, so we're going to start with pfSense.
Yeah, I mean, I'm torn between this and the Ubiquiti stuff, but I think for my money, this is the most astonishing thing on this list.
This one has some real implications.
So there's pfSense. We've talked about it before. We had Wes from our friend of the show, Wes Fenlon, on
PC Gamers, Wes Fenlon,
to talk about he built a pfSense machine. Actually, do you know what? I forgot to even roll the original pfSense drama into this. Like, this goes back years.
What's the original pfSense drama?
I almost feel like we have to stop so you can read it. Okay. Years ago. So pfSense is based on a very old open source project, I believe, called MonoWall. I am pulling this from memory. Forgive me if I get any of this stuff wrong. That MonoWall is very old. It's FreeBSD based. It's like a very old, respected FreeBSD based firewall. And pfSense was forked from that. And pfSense has been around for years. It's very well respected. But at a point, something happened in the pfSense community, like some years ago, 3, 4, or 5 years ago. And you may have heard of OpenSense. I think we've talked about it.
Yeah, I remember OpenSense.
So OpenSense is a fork of pfSense, forked by people who didn't really agree with the direction that pfSense was going.
Okay. Now this is a component of scene drama we should have talked about before that I love. Like open source scene drama when somebody's like, fuck you, I'm just taking this and going to do something else and make it good.
The Spiteful Fork.
Yeah, the Spiteful Fork. Like sometimes it's like there's a GIMP fork, the open source Photoshop clone.
It's called, the name always escapes me, which like
It's called Glimpse. It's a
Glimpse.
fork of GIMP.
That's right.
Because just to be clear, GIMP is a fucking terrible name in 2021.
Yeah,
it was a bad name when the project started, but it's yeah.
I have taken to referring to it as the GNU image manipulation program.
Yeah, okay, fair.
That's like when the dog pees on the floor and you rub the dog's face in it. To be clear, I have never actually done that to a dog and would not.
No, you should not do that to the dog.
But I feel like if they're going to name their thing that, I'm just going to make them listen to the entire name every time.
Yeah. Well, you should actually do the whole what the abbreviation, which is not an abbreviation for GNU, is also.
What is GNU? Is not
GNU
Unix?
is not Unix image manipulation program.
GNU, see, that just is an infinite regress, right? That never stops recursing. So I just say that over and over and over.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, OpenSense forked off of pfSense at some point.
So open source, FreeSense. Hold on, Monowall begat OpenSense, and OpenSense begat
very old
pfSense.
Also, I want to say that yes, I've got this right. The O's are not O's in Monowall; they're zeros. If you want to
their URL is maybe the worst URL I've ever seen because it's m0n0.ch /wall.
Yes. Oh, they're endorsing OpenSense now.
Yeah.
If you go to the Monowall website, they are straight up linking you to OpenSense. I think that is pretty telling.
One of the things about Scene Drama is it has all of the drama of like an IRC net split channel takeover from like 1995.
Yes,
when like there's a big FNet split, which is where the servers get out of sync with each other for a few minutes, and like one of your favorite channels is empty, and a bunch of people will move in and drop their bots in to try to maintain op after the servers reconnect.
It is 100% that. It is 100% that. I am utilizing my newfound knowledge and putting a link in this Google Doc and typing Control-K.
Yep.
And now you can click on that link and go see what happened between pfSense and OpenSense. The short version is the pfSense people did not take kindly at all to it being forked by people with different opinions. And they went out and registered opensense.com before the actual OpenSense people could and put up, like, are you looking at this page? Like, they put up like some of the most like pathetic mudslinging slander on this website. We have features, but that's not what's important. When we fork a stable enterprise proven software project, we strip out most of the important functionality. It's just also the Hitler meme is on here from Downfall. Like they put that in this page.
Wow.
It's made to look like a real official OpenSense homepage, but it's nothing but like a feature list that is nothing but talking shit about this fork of their product and likening them to Nazi or using this ridiculous Nazi meme. Like it's pathetic.
Wow, what we do on our off time, and it's a picture of a guy riding like a hobby horse at a kid's park.
Right. And for all I know, that might be one of the actual OpenSense developers. Like these people see the pfSense people seem petty enough to go out and track down photos of the actual developers and put them up like that. Like,
wow, that is a high level of spite. This is maybe better scene drama because like what was the original fuss over? Do you remember?
Over, you mean the fork?
Like why the fork and the spiteful website?
I've never seen a great explanation of that beyond like they just thought, I want to say they maybe thought the project was too conservative, like it wasn't adding features fast enough or something like that. I don't think it was anything like, I don't think it was anything that contentious.
Like I didn't have commit flags, so I'm just going to fork my own version and pull all the other people without commit flags to start rolling up. Wow. Okay.
They went to court over this, if I'm not mistaken.
They filed complaints with the WIPO, which is the World Intellectual Property Organization, is my understanding.
They sought arbitration, which went in their favor because, of course, it would.
Yeah. I think they in this case? OpenSense? The real OpenSense or fake OpenSense?
No, real OpenSense. I mean,
fake OpenSense.
Fake OpenSense was just pfSense. Yes, that's who was putting up this fake pet website was the pfSense people. Like, and they also like astroturfed on Reddit, if I'm not mistaken. I think they went and like posted some anyway. This stuff's fairly old.
Netgate, the company that makes pfSense, is bad. I'm thinking at this point, Brad.
That's the pretext. That's the backstory here. This was 2016, I believe, that all that went down. But then, dude, like we hadn't gotten to the stuff from this year. So Netgate is the company that basically runs pfSense, even though it's an open source product. Like they put out a bunch of little boxes that run the software.
Yeah, like
they make appliances, right? That you can run pfSense on.
It's one of the open source business ways is that you either sell services like maintenance contracts and security updates and stuff like consulting, or you sell a product that uses the hardware
or both,
the software,
or both. Yes, but the core software product generally is free, and that you're right. That's how they make their money. So, okay, pfSense commissioned a software developer to port Wireguard, which is a very new, modern, like super efficient VPN protocol.
Yeah,
or product package to pfSense.
that's correct.
Which essentially means that they're porting it to FreeBSD because that's what pfSense is underneath.
Well, the thing, my understanding is that WireGuard needed kernel access to BSD. So in order to do this, they needed a BSD kernel developer who had like low-level networking experience, because you're essentially making a kernel-level network interface for BSD that uses the WireGuard tunneling protocol.
You're right.
Encrypted tunneling protocol.
I don't remember exactly. I think that you're right. There might have been a user space implementation of WireGuard for FreeBSD already, and my guess
is that there's performance issues or something with that. It doesn't. Yeah,
there definitely are. Not to get too into the weeds, but the WireGuard people just put out a kernel level Windows version of WireGuard because they had a user space version, and like the performance increase was massive. It was like 25% or something. So
they hired this guy Matthew Macy, who is a BSD contributor
or has been at one time.
Yeah, it seems like it.
It seems like maybe he hadn't contributed in a while because he had been up to some other things.
Okay, so not to he had some legal issues that weren't the result of software behavior.
Yeah,
but he spent 4 years in jail because he was a bad felonious level of bad landlord.
Yes, landlords from hell. Or how
in San Francisco. So, hey, I can see that.
Yes, this ABC story describes him and his wife as landlords from hell because if I remember, they were terrorizing their tenants essentially, like by doing things like cutting a hole in the floor of one of their tenants' apartments, and I believe they pulled a gun on somebody.
They removed floor joists so that the house would be condemned. All of this, it was like I've heard some insane San Francisco landlord stories, but this one was really. It's really above and beyond.
And also, if I'm not mistaken, he fled the country, correct? Before he was...
That is my understanding. He was extradited from Italy, I believe,
like he fled the
this Ars Technica article.
Like just purely based on his flight from the law. Based on the fact that this story includes an international fugitive from justice, I feel like that automatically makes this the worst scene drama in this episode.
I think that's not the thing that makes this the worst scene drama. I think that
the most dramatic. Let me put it that way. That is definitely the most like sensational.
Well, so okay, we don't need to get into the specifics. There's an Ars Technical article that we'll link that tells you basically the gist. But like, there's some really obvious stuff like not accounting for jumbo frames on network packet setups that caused kernel panics and things like that.
It was like, to back up or to give the 10,000 foot view, like it was a very poor, buggy, insecure implementation of WireGuard, to the point that the actual WireGuard developer, like he seems to have been very diplomatic through this whole thing, but he also came out and like a lot of people came out and said, this is not production ready. This is not acceptable in any sense of the word to be included in the FreeBSD kernel, which is like, an extremely well-respected and like critical piece of infrastructure for a lot of companies.
Okay. So there's the bad code, which is not great. Then there's also some other stuff that happened. pfSense took the submission and backported it to the current version of BSD that they use on their appliances. So, and made it available immediately. So when people were like, hey, there's a bunch of vulnerabilities in this WireGuard implementation that's been checked into the kernel, but not actually released yet. It was in a pre-release version.
I believe it was, if I'm not mistaken, it
was 13, I think.
Yes, it was committed for FreeBSD 13, which had not released at the time. So it never made it to proper FreeBSD. But it did make it into pfSense, which was released.
Well, yeah. And the problem is when they released the list of vulnerabilities, it immediately makes all those pfSense boxes potentially vulnerable to the exploits added by this code. And it ends up in a, like, BSD is in a situation where like nobody running pre-release BSD should be running on prod machines is their official policy. But these pfSense machines were presumably production machines, and like it's a security problem at that point. So I don't know who's right or wrong there. Like it seems like Netgate is maybe not an awesome company.
Well, I mean, this goes on and on and on. So like the developer of WireGuard, Jason Donenfeld, I believe is his name, came out of nowhere.
Kind of an innocent and like just gets roped into this whole scene drama.
It actually gets worse because he produced multiple email threads with Kip Macy, the guy who wrote the felon who wrote the bad, like the bad landlord who wrote the bad code.
No, that's Matt
He goes by
Matt.
Kip, Matt Macy,
right,
but
right.
like you see him referred to as Kip Macy quite a bit here. But
Got it.
Donenfeld, the actual Wireguard creator, produced a bunch of email threads over the last like year where he had offered to help Macy with the FreeBSD implementation, and they had been like, nah, like they kind of brushed him off.
Ooh.
So he kind of came out of the woodwork and rewrote this entire module in like a week or two.
With a couple other people, it said,
and like got it where it needed to be and recommitted it to the kernel, and like that stuff all seems to be taken care of. But on the flip side, the people who run Netgate really just circled the wagons around this bad code they had put out in like a pretty embarrassing way, right?
Yeah, that seems right. In a way that would make me not want to use their products, I would say, as a consumer of this type of product.
Yes. I meant to get these posts in front of me.
So I mean, really the big so the thing that came out of this that was interesting to me, and the lesson to learn, I guess, is that there's often not a lot of code review that goes into both Linux and BSD, like even core kernel elements like network implementations and stuff like that.
Yes.
In a way that makes me wonder how many nation states are embedding people on these open source often volunteer teams to, just put up whatever useful stuff is in there. If like nobody's reviewing code that goes into BSD kernels, and there's like the same thing happened with Linux a few months ago.
Yes.
You pointed out with that University of Minnesota thing.
So yeah, like this definitely kind of looked to me, at least. I mean, I'm kind of a layman. I'm not an open source developer, but I follow this stuff, and it kind of did look like some egg on the face of the FreeBSD community.
Well, I mean, they caught it before it went out to the public, though.
Yes, obviously, yes. But it did make it through. It had been committed.
I guess that's true.
And then so what happened with Linux in a kind of similar situation, the University of Minnesota was found to, like, they essentially referred to it as a study they were running. They were intentionally submitting problematic code to the Linux kernel. I don't know if it was vulnerabilities or what the problems were exactly, but like they were essentially like kind of testing. I don't know if this counts as penetration testing, but they were like testing the code review processes of the Linux kernel developers to see if they could get bad code in there, and they sure enough did.
And then they got blacklisted they're banned from submitting code to the Linux kernel indefinitely.
That was the Linux community's response was, well, you can never submit code to the kernel again, which is understandable, but
doesn't solve the larger problem, I guess.
Yeah, I did a fair amount of reading about both these situations at the time, and I think what I got from it was the enlightened position that I got from this ultimately was like, yeah, no shit, some of these vulnerabilities got through because these are like all volunteer communities with like a chronic lack of eyeballs to do proper code review. And like, there's a certain presumption of good faith on the part of people who are submitting code to projects like this.
Yeah.
And like, that doesn't address the issue of like bad actors necessarily slipping stuff in there, but like they don't really have a choice but to rely on the goodwill of the people who are doing work for them.
Well, I think part of the problem is that if you are in a position and have the expertise to do a code review and look and see if things are, working as intended or bad actors or just bugs, probably you could also be writing code, and there's always an infinite amount of code to be written. It seems like.
Yes.
This seems like a solution that could easily be solved by the multi-trillion dollar companies that use open source software to make billions and billions of dollars a year, dedicating some resources to this.
Yes. But I mean, that opens a different can of worms of like, should corporations, like, yes, corporations who are profiting massively from all this free work should support it, but like,
and they do, but in a lot of cases
they do. Like, in fact, a lot of them are the biggest contributors to these projects in terms of code as well as like financial support. But then you get into that thorny issue of like, are corporations exerting undue influence on these projects by contributing a lot of money to them,
Well, I mean, they're definitely like, if you're Google and you hire a developer to write, software for the Linux kernel, you're definitely exerting influence because, you're spending your company's resources to add human power to the project.
I feel like I would draw a distinction between submitting code and offering money, because code trickles down to everybody. If they add features, if they do good work on those projects, everyone benefits from that directly by having access to that software, right? But like, if they are just pumping a bunch of money into things, that's where you get into the weird gray area of like, are they able to influence the people that they are supporting in a more like a fuzzier kind of way?
That's fair.
The last thing I was going to say, we didn't get into this enough, and I Netgate's response to this stuff is where the drama really like went into overdrive because they essentially blamed everybody but themselves for this stuff. Like they blamed the Wireguard developer. They blamed the other people who like exposed the vulnerabilities. Like they basically treated themselves like the victims in this situation.
They tried to post through it.
They absolutely tried to blog through it in like some really long, like the pfSense Reddit subreddit was a disaster for like weeks after this. Like it was nothing but people saying like, well, how do I install OpenSense? Like where's everybody moving to? Like it was like it looked like an entire community abandoning this project en masse.
Wow.
They just did not like the last paragraph of this Netgate blog they put up. So what have I learned from this? I've learned to be a little less trusting.
Well, that's probably not the right lesson.
I've learned to be more proactive in defending against people who have ulterior motives. I've learned that people who emphatically say that they're here to help often aren't. Again, remember, he's talking about the people who exposed the vulnerabilities in the product and code that they themselves commissioned and released.
Not the person who wrote the bad code.
No, they defended their software author. They defended the product. They defended all of it. They absolutely painted themselves as the victims and acted like the entire rest of the world was out to get them. Like I'm telling you, in terms of torching your company's reputation,
it's really impressive in like a month, a period of like 6 weeks or something.
It does not get more dire than this. Like I was just astonished watching this happen.
That's that's a choice, all right.
Yeah, for sure. Looking at the subreddit, it seems to have settled down. They seem to, whoever left probably was going to leave. Whoever went to OpenSense or, ViOS or whatever has done so.
But I mean, presumably there's a bunch of people who just buy the boxes off the shelf and don't know that all this is happening in the back end.
Yes.
Speaking of networking stuff seems to attract this kind of
Steve drop. Wow. That was
much louder than I expected.
That's exactly. Well, you have to normalize this later. So
yeah, I know this is my problem I've made.
That's pretty close to the effect I was actually looking for. We'll see how it turns out. But it turns out when you put all of your precious hardware and the information therein onto a worldwide network and give people like poorly guarded points of ingress, it leads to a lot of ugly situations.
Well, it turns out that cloud services are hard. Who knew?
Yeah, yes, I guess so. So
we're going to talk about Ubiquiti now, I guess.
Yes. So do you want to step us through this Krebs on security article?
Yeah. So this one is interesting because this one has something we haven't talked about. We have a whistleblower here.
Yes.
But it happened. This started in December 2020 with a breach that was basically the TLDR here is that there was a security breach of the new cloud service that it seems like the users of the Ubiquiti software or hardware maybe aren't super keen on in the first place.
Yeah. Ubiquiti maker of like kind of prosumer routers and access points, like sort of
small business, small to mid-sized business. Like
one foot in the enterprise world, but still like affordable and like usable at home.
Yeah, and they've been moving people from the old line of especially the small business side, from the old line of hardware into these more kind of cloud managed things that are more analogous. It's the analog of moving from like a old Linksys router where you log in with a website thing to like a Google Home router or a Eero or something like that where you have like an app on your phone.
Yeah, we're essentially talking about making an account on their servers in their system so that you can access your stuff at home from elsewhere, but by proxy through their system, right? Like they have got credentials and authorization to get into your network hardware at home.
And let's see, that immediately before all of this stuff came out, like the community was already starting to get a little upset because they started putting ads in the admin interface.
So this is like essentially what we're talking about here is Ubiquiti's no good, very bad week. Because it was literally like 2 days before this Krebs article. People were super mad on places like Reddit because Ubiquiti had started, granted, ads only for their other products, not for other companies, but they were upselling. They were pushing ad units into their the controller software for their home network stuff, upselling you on other more expensive products that they make.
And like, just to be clear, my router is probably the very, very, very last place that I ever want to see ads, mainly because, I mean, I have a thing that sits beside my router that takes all of the ads out of my network.
So
Please, no ads.
Also, it's
Don't put
critical
ads.
infrastructure. Like it is as far as your home network goes, it's about as critical as it gets. Like, let's just keep it all business, please.
Like a large number of our problems are because in the late 90s, we chose to allow advertisers to pay money to run arbitrary code on our computers.
Yeah.
And it turns out that was probably a mistake. So anyway, here we are.
Yes. So that had just happened a couple days before this Krebs story. Also, I will say, like, I think Ubiquiti's fortunes have been in decline in a lot of people's eyes for like a number of months or years at this point.
Yeah.
Because like I have an Edge Router 4 that I really like, and they have all but abandoned that the Edge Max line.
You can't even find them on like you have to really dig to find those on their site now.
Like supposedly all of their engineers, their software engineers left because the version 2 Linux release for the Edge routers was a complete disaster, like buggy mess for. So they've been very poorly supporting some of their product lines. They're just pushing into this prosumer, like really sleek, manicured home networking stuff instead of the really kind of crusty graybeard stuff they used to make. But
do they still have serial ports on all their hardware?
Probably on all the newer stuff.
Okay.
I would say I do have a serial cable connected to mine.
So, okay. So here's on January 11th of this year, they released a notice that said they had become aware of an unauthorized access to certain of our information technology systems hosted by a third-party cloud provider, although it declined to name the third party. Now, what they really meant there, according to the whistleblower, was the attackers had gained administrative access to Ubiquiti's servers at Amazon's cloud service, which is like the equivalent of having hardware level access in a like hardware colo or something like that. So they'd gotten the keys, the cryptographic keys that would let people get access to the VMs that run the cloud service on Amazon. So it wasn't an Amazon breach that made their machines accessible. It was a them breach for their machines that were hosted on Amazon, which the words are the same, but they're in a different order that changes the meaning pretty dramatically.
I mean, my layman's understanding of this is they got everything. Like they got about as much access to this system as they could get. And it was entirely Ubiquiti's negligence that caused it.
For what seems like a pretty long time, maybe. Yeah, like they knew about. So like one of the rules of this in this space, in like the security space, is that when you find out there's a breach, you notify as fast as you can while being safe. And you also take steps like often you'll log into a site and it'll be like, hey, your password, you have to change your password. Here's why. And then there's a link you probably don't click that tells you that they had some sort of breach or something like that. And they reset everybody's passwords so that you can't use the old, suspect passwords to get into the systems.
Yes.
So they didn't invalidate all the old passwords. They basically popped a thing up that says, hey, you should change your password probably. And the intruders put a couple of backdoors in the system, one which they knew about and told everybody about and were like, hey, if you send us 50 Bitcoin, we'll tell you about the other back door and not tell you about this breach.
Right.
That's $2.8 million at the time in US currency. Ubiquiti didn't pay the money. They found the second back door eventually, and they rotated credentials for all employees before they started alerting customers about the need to reset the password. It took several days, right? This whole thing.
And again, to be clear, that notification they put out that you should change your password was by no means adequate to address the actual breach that happened.
Right. So the problem is at this point, presumably every single customer of the Ubiquiti cloud managed hardware is like their hardware is potentially at risk at this point.
Right. Like the accusations of this whistleblower are that the breach was just massively more severe than Ubiquiti let on, and that they covered it up to protect their share price.
Yeah.
Their stock price, not in any way to protect the security of their customers.
So and since the breach presumably also included like firmware source code, because they got access to their code management and all that stuff, like presumably they could have installed backdoors on people's routers and stuff like that. And like your advice is to ditch all of your old profiles and rebuild everything from scratch from the security community. Yeah. If you're using these devices. If I
understand correctly here, another aspect of this is that they did not have like full kind of access logging set up on a lot of the database and data stuff that was in these instances.
Well, so they said that they had no evidence that consumer information was accessed.
So that was another one of those selective omission things, right? Where like they had no evidence that the information was accessed because they have no way to tell if the information was accessed or not because they didn't have logging set up on it.
I mean, okay, so just to be clear, sometimes not logging stuff is really good. Like I'm really happy that Signal doesn't run logs on their so there's no metadata that describes how often you and I communicate on Signal, right?
Sure.
Like that's a good case for not logging.
Yes, absolutely.
This is probably a bad case for not logging from what I can tell. I'm not an expert. Doesn't sound good to me.
I like to spend a lot of time in the networking channel on our Discord. There are a lot of very smart people in there, and a lot of them work in InfoSec and, adjacent networking fields. I feel like the entire week that this got out, it was just nothing but like jaws dropping in that channel at the gross negligence that led to this. Never mind the like corporate malfeasance of not informing the customer base properly. Like people were just like, and like the comments on this Krebs story are the same way of people are just like astonished that their security was poor enough to allow this to happen in the first place.
Well, yeah. Well, so I guess the question is what ended up like, they kind of posted through it, but they posted through it in a slightly smarter way than our friends at pfSense did. I guess this is the argument against you that like the worst thing of all of this is that I think the initial vector was that somebody got access to a former Ubiquiti IT employee's LastPass account, which had all of these credentials in it.
Yes.
And as a result, they were able to get through this. This is probably an argument for corporations, especially people that deal low-level security stuff like router and networking hardware people, to maybe pay for corporate, like I'm going to get nuts here, but maybe instead of letting somebody use their personal LastPass account to store all of your business in, maybe pay for the corporate ones. You can turn off the account when they quit. Take that data back. Maybe. I don't know.
Ubiquiti made $1 billion last year from what I'm reading.
Oof. A lot of routers.
They could probably pay for the yes.
I hope that they learn from this, but it seems like they maybe haven't. So I don't know.
I don't see any indication that they have. I think that again, it seems like they are pivoting to target a customer base that probably would not know, certainly does not read Krebs on security on a daily basis to know about things like this. I
do like that they draw lines between which switch is plugged into which device, though, on the fancy tablet UI.
They've got some nice diagrams. They've got some cool stuff. Like they've got some cool stuff. Like a lot of people on our Discord, like I said, I have an Edge router and one of their Unify access points. Like I enjoyed using them. Like they're not bad products.
Yeah.
But the leadership of the company seems suspect at best. I don't anticipate buying any more Ubiquiti products in the wake of this. Not that I need any more networking stuff anytime soon, but
yeah. But yeah, I think it's a fine choice. Why is this stuff always network stuff? Can we talk about the Linksys GPL stuff?
Sure. I mean, that's probably the oldest example we could find.
It's the first time I remember somebody getting pissed off with an actual company versus like some other open source project about GPL violations.
Okay.
And I'm sure that there's an older one. Like I'm absolutely positive that there's stuff, but this is a post on the LKML, which I think the Linux kernel maintainer list, or maybe mailing list. I can't remember. From June 8th, 2003 is the /dot post. But the post says, sorry for the very lengthy posting, but I want to be as precise as possible in describing this problem. A while ago, I mentioned that the Linksys WRT54G wireless access point used several GPL projects in its firmware, but did not seem to have any of the source available or acknowledge the use of the GPL software. Obviously, if you use open source, GPL licensed software in your projects, you're supposed to share the code that you generate that's attached to that and everything else downstream, publish what you use, etc. 4 weeks ago, I spoke with an employee at Linksys who confirmed that the system did use Linux and also mentioned that he would work with his management to ensure that the source was released. Unfortunately, my emails to this individual over the past 3 weeks have gone unanswered. Of course, I also tried contacting Linksys through their common public email accounts, blah, 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 to no avail. It's hard for me to know if the contact has just gone on a 3-week vacation or has been asked to not answer any more email on the subject, blah, 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 blah. Don't own the project, can't actually test. The upshot is, hey, here are the problems. You can look in the firmware, you can see what they're using, you can do checksums and all that. And there's no upshot. I remember talking about this when I was at Maximum PC. This was this is the beginning of things like DDWRT and Tomato, the open source router firmwares, because once they realized that, this is just based on the GPL, and once Linksys eventually came around and started posting the stuff they were supposed to, then people were able to just write their own firmware and you could get rid of the crappy Linksys software and run crappy open source software instead.
Sure.
I mean, you could do a lot more stuff, but it was still, it was rough for a long time. I don't know. I mean, there was drama at the time. I'm sure there was mailing list drama. I did not dig into the mailing lists here to see what the LKML had to say about the project at the time, because the threads are incredibly lengthy.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, what? And it ranges from like straight indignation to, oh wait, that means there's drivers for all of these Broadcom wireless controllers that are in there that we can then roll back up into the Linux when they release the source code for this stuff. And should we even deal with these people? They're clearly monsters, and like, the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, that just gets back to the same thing I was talking about, of people that work on and shepherd these projects are very protective of them.
Well, especially back then too. Like, GPL wasn't new, but Linux was still pretty new.
And this was like just
10 years old.
A little over 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know that they're any less protective now.
Oh no, I'm sure not. So, I mean, I guess there's a couple. We have more scene drama we could get to. We're kind of out of time. We're getting close though. What do you like? Is there a happy takeaway from this, or is this just like a cost of doing business in the open source / for-profit business world? Yeah,
when you ask that question, now I'm sitting here trying to think, like, do you see this kind of drama in the closed source, more commercial space? I guess because those companies are closed by nature, they are allowed to not let their dirty laundry out in public, right? So,
but you do see like corporate espionage stuff, and you see people saying, "Oh, hey, you took our blah blah blah, or you're infringing on our copyright for your logo or whatever." But yeah, it's a weird side effect of open source specifically. There's the ffmpeg versus Newtek thing, which has maybe the most open source community responding to a GPL violation response I've ever seen.
Yes,
where this person who works at Newtek's like, "Hey, we'd love to make this right. What can we do to help? Can you contact us and let us know what we should be doing?" And the person's like, "No, I'd rather be fixing bugs than dealing with you. You fucking figure out how to fix the problem that you made.
Right. Also,
this is your problem, not ours."
If I'm not mistaken, so Newtek was distributing precompiled builds of binaries of ffmpeg, which is an explicit licensing violation.
Yes.
I believe they could have just stopped including those binaries with their SDK and resolve the problem. But the ffmpeg's people's, if I'm not mistaken, their solution was, hey, why don't you just open source your entire library? Like, just make it free. Like, just put all the source code for your closed source library out there. Like, I believe that was the actual resolution they wanted. They were like, expose all your trade secrets.
Well, I mean, but the point of the GPL, I mean, this is why a lot of places you're not allowed to use GPL code, right? Is because the GPL is
people call it viral.
I'm not a lawyer, and nor am I a licensing person. We should have somebody who understands software licensing come on and talk about this at some point.
This is the most this podcast thing ever, but I would absolutely spend an hour talking to an expert about software licensing.
I know people we can talk to about that, but I feel like a lot of companies I've worked at, and actually people I consulted when we were doing Foo were like, "Hey, don't use GPL code in your stuff because it'll cause you problems later potentially." I was like, okay. So we didn't use GPL code. This is why MIT license and BSD license and stuff like that are more permissive and allow you to then like use the open source code, publish the changes for the code that you're using, and not the changes for all the code that it touches. Right. And I mean, ultimately the right thing for NDI probably to do, for Newtek to do, was to open source NDI, because then they would be the standard and would have had a multi-year head start on traversing networks with large IP. They would have had a big team of people working on their stuff, and they probably would have gotten out in front of the open RTMP stuff or whatever the new thing is. SRT.
Well, there are multiple. Like, SRT is not the only one. It's the one that got open sourced years ago.
Yeah, it's the RTMP.
It's successor protocols.
Successors,
yes. But yes, specifically the company that developed that open sourced it, and because of that, it's in OBS. It's in vMix. Like, it's everywhere. It's in ffmpeg. Yeah. It's in like everything that people use for this stuff, because they put the source out. Whereas, like, NDI is in a lot of that stuff too, but like the applications are a lot more inflexible, I think, or like what can be done with it is entirely at Newtek's discretion, not at the discretion of anyone who can download the code and do something with it.
Well, yeah. And also it's still limited to inside your NAT, one subnet, et cetera, like all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So anyway, And also it's made more complicated by the fact that NDI was sending nasty grams to open source developers who were reverse engineering NDI, the NDI protocol to do open source implementations.
I think that's where a lot of the ire actually came from on the part of the ffmpeg people was like, well,
that seems right.
You are perfectly happy to cease and desist people who you think are violating your product's integrity, but then you turn around and use our free code that we do for free however you want and flat the licensing and whatever. Yeah, I'm sad we don't have time to fully dig into the chair drama.
Maybe that's the patron episode this month.
Maybe it is. For whatever reason, like you said, all the drama we got into on this one is around open source projects, and like even the ones we didn't get into, like the stuff that happened with the Mister a few months ago.
Open source projects.
But the evil RAM, the bad RAM fiasco with the Mister, still an open source project.
That all resolved nicely, though, didn't it? Didn't everybody end up nice?
They de-escalated. I believe everybody sort of reached an accord on that one.
I like that.
Everybody became more or less friendly again.
I like de-escalation much more than the posting through it. Just to be clear, if this ever happens to you, don't post through it. It's the wrong way to go. But it never works out.
No, but the chair drama.
What's the high point? You want to save it?
The tease. We have unfortunately a little bit of a short recording window this week, but I bought this office chair. I bought this refurbished steel case Leap V2 a few months ago, and of course, I spent a good amount of time on the R office chair subreddit.
The Reddit's #1 source for fine office chair information.
Maybe we will save this for the Patreon episode. I don't know. We should get back to this because it's really insane and hilarious. But the CEO or one of the high ups at one of the two companies I was thinking about ordering the chair from.
Yeah.
And a Smurf account, like an anonymous account, Reddit account that is universally believed to be affiliated with the other company that I was thinking about buying the chair from.
What?
Trolling each other and sniping at each other in the most juvenile way across that subreddit, across like 2 years of posts, because I was searching for the chair I wanted to buy to find posts and see people talking about it. This Smurf account referring to, actually it is the CEO of Crandall and BTOD are the two companies. And like the Smurf account referring to the CEO of BTOD as Pizza Boy Greg all the time and mocking them about some legal trouble that they're in.
Wow.
And the actual representative of BTOD coming out and saying like, oh, you're at it again, Crandall. Why don't you just post under your real name? Like calling them out directly for being their competitor who was anonymously slandering their company.
Yeah.
It's like post after post of this stuff. Like it's crazy. Like they just like,
why?
It was so over the top that you look at it and you almost go like, is this viral marketing? Is this an ARG? Like, are they trying to drum up awareness of both of their companies? Because this seems too ridiculous to be real.
It's the Deus Ex coffee thing. Remember the second Deus Ex game, the Harvey Smith one, where there were two competing coffee chains. And then you get spoilers, by the way, for a 20-year-old video game. You get to the end. It's the same company that runs both of those coffee chains.
So in this case, they had done business together before. They had done business where I believe like one was refurbishing chairs for the other, and then the other one was reselling them. And they had an acrimonious split, I believe. And it's funny because you see reps from both companies like engaging with their customers in the most informative and jovial way. Like they're very very polite, very professional. But then they keep getting into these tangles with each other in the middle of the subreddit. These two chair companies trolling each other.
Oh, seating magnates. You know how they get. You get around all that foam and it just messes with your head, man.
The high octane world of office chair refurbishing.
Look, you put too many rollerblade wheels on too many chairs. You just can't slow down.
It's just rollerblade wheels and cocaine all night long.
We are not actually implying that anyone that works in the office chair refurbishing business is using rollerblade wheels or cocaine.
No, certainly not. I'm just,
I want to tell you about barbecue drama, but I'm going to save that for the patron episode for our wonderful patrons.
Yes.
Who, as always, thank you, patrons, for supporting the show. The Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod is, as we all know, a 100% patron supported show. And we continue to do this every week for you all, our wonderful patrons. We love you guys. Yeah. You're fantastic.
Thank you for listening to our nonsense.
Yeah. And like kind, generous, and nice smelling, I would say.
Yeah.
But a special thanks to our executive producer tier patrons, Andrew Slowski, the Bunny Fiend, Jacob Chappell, Joel Krauska, Twinkle Twinkie, David Allen, and James Kemick. Thank you all so much for your support. We appreciate it so much. I had a lovely chat this morning on the Discord, Brad.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were talking about gaming chairs.
Oh.
and somebody was like, hey, can you do a thing about the technology of gaming chairs? I was like, we don't even need to do an episode about that. I can just tell you right now. They're aftermarket car seats with wheels and arms glued onto them.
Is that, are you being, are you generalizing, or are they literal car seats?
For the most part, the place where that universal gaming bucket seat that everybody on Twitch has, they're aftermarket car seats that are rebadged. Actual
car seats, holy shit.
With the right frame to put a post on.
Holy shit.
And armrests glued onto them. Now, there are exceptions. I believe the Secret Labs folks do actual ergonomic work, and they're like taking task chairs and making them gamery. The Herman Miller thing that they did with Logitech with the crossover chair is a real high end task chair that just has like different fabric and a little bit sturdier frame.
That's a $1,500 chair. Like Herman Miller is an actual chair maker.
Yeah. So, but my thing, we ended up having an interesting conversation about like the categories where gamer stuff makes sense and the category where gamer stuff is like bad marketing that just jacks up the price. And the takeaway was mice, probably gamer stuff's pretty good. Yeah. Nobody else needs like weird stuff in mice. Monitors, maybe. Variable refresh rate, stuff like that's pretty good. Desks, less so.
Yeah.
Keyboards, maybe, but only for like kind of like, you know, if you, that's a choice at that point. Chairs, probably not. No. Headphones, questionable. Like my argument with headphones, we're going to lose some. We don't have sponsors, so I can say whatever the hell I want.
That's right.
The problem with headphones is that for what a really nice high-end pair of gamer headphones costs, you can get a professional level headphone that has a good microphone, good sound, and is probably more comfortable in the long term. Maybe has a wire. So anyway, that was the conversation I had this morning on the TechPod Discord. You can join in too by going to patreon.com/techpod. That's patreon.com/techpod.
If it weren't for the wonderful patrons on our Discord, I would not really have fully understood the importance of lumbar support.
Lumbar support's very important. It's good for your back.
It turns out I sit up very straight. I don't have a choice but to sit up very straight in this chair.
Yeah, you need something poking you in the back so you know not to mess up. That's my...
Gets your posture right. Thank you, patrons, for schooling me on this chair.
Love the patrons. We will be back next week with another episode of Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod. Thank you all for listening. If you don't subscribe, tell a friend. I love seeing we get a bunch of really good tweets from people that are like, hey, these guys named Brad and Will make a really cool podcast every week, and I really like listening to it. I enjoyed the episode about hackers, and then the one about the nerds arguing about license stuff was cool too. Love that stuff. We love seeing those.
Absolutely.
Have a wonderful week, folks.